February 19th, 2025. Let's stand into this Pledge of Allegiance for our afternoon working session. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to open session? We've done that before the pledge.
I make a motion to open the budget work session at 4:30.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next item is the approval of the agenda. I hope everybody's had a chance to look at it. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion for the Queen Anne's County Board of Education to approve the February 12th, 2025 agenda as presented.
I did it again, February 19th.
Oh.
Again. I'm sorry.
February 19th agenda as presented. It's
I
okay.
second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. What you got?
So the board, last time we met, asked and charged the team with coming up with 3 options or summaries based on one, flat allocation, which means no money from either the commissioners or the state, one at a $5 million place marker from the commissioners, and then another option. I have shared those options. I should say Dr. Kibler is sharing those options with the board.
Right now?
Yeah, via folder, so that you can have them electronically. I think it's easier for you to look at them on your screen. So I did share with the board previously that it was my recommendation that we would kind of not focus in on the flat funding and more start with the $5 million, which our commissioners are wonderful. They've been extremely supportive. They have publicly committed to that starting point or that placeholder. Instead, I would say that we look at the $5 million, that we move to the second option that the board asked us to create, but then there is another option, which basically would be a full funding of everything we would need to move forward. And so I need to know the direction that the board would like to go, whether they want to look at the first 3 that the charge from last week, or whether they would like to move forward with my recommendation. I think that the first option of flat funding would basically put our community, our staff members into an environment of fear that would be unnecessary, because we know that the commissioners are supporting us, and we know that that support's there. And I think that could create just angst within and among our staff members that I think may not be necessary, but I'm happy to move forward with whatever the board decides. I will tell you that we met with the commissioners last year and provided them with some projections for what this year's ask would be, and we were at 7.5 million, which is very in line to one of the options. The only difference between that one and our full ask, which would be kind of like option 4 at this point, would be the furlough days. We know the furlough days were a Band-Aid. They didn't fix the problem, they just pushed the problem, so we would need to address that. So the option that we provided for you that you didn't necessarily ask for was an option that includes everything we need. And it would be my recommendation that the board would review that, ask some good questions about it, but would move forward with asking for what we need to keep whole and moving into next year. So, team, did I miss anything? So I guess we'll just entertain some questions as it relates to the budget information presented.
The 25 budget alignment furlough position control, that's for this calendar year or for the next school year?
That's for the next school year. The furlough information, the furloughs that we did this year helped us to make us whole. So if we want to not have to do furloughs next year, we would have to put that money into the budget for next year.
We have to come up with $2 million.
That's exactly right. Yeah, so that would be moving forward and resolving that Band-Aid that we kind of put on for last year.
So option B would still need the furlough days. Am I?
Every
or
option.
Every option still needs the furlough
Every
days?
option.
Okay,
No,
all right.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
What we've done in 3 of these 4 options is put in there making up for having to do furloughs this year. It is not suggesting that we need to furlough
Let's not go
next
into that.
year.
Okay,
No,
It's
no, no.
recognizing that
Okay.
in the FY25 budget, we had to do furloughs. This is accounting for that money in
Okay.
next year's budget,
Okay,
so that we don't have to do it again.
right, okay, good, that's, good start. I mean, are there any gives in the budget, like anywhere? I mean, I guess I'm sure you've looked at all the cost savings, anything we can do, but I mean, the big money comes from salaries, so there's really not much we can, I guess I'm
Really good
asking.
question. So about 85% of our budget is salaries. The other 15%, a lot of that is fixed costs. Things such as, your gas, transportation, electricity, phones, all those kinds of things.
Which we expect
So
all
there's
those
not,
to rise.
there's not a lot of fat per se in the budget, but last year when we, of course, we did everything we could possibly do before furloughing. So we really did, we cut the textbook line item, we cut back on wherever we could tweak. We did no conferences at all this year unless they were completely 100% through our grant process. So things like that we do have a little control over. We've already diminished those opportunities this year to be able to get through this year. So yeah, so all of that would have to relate to staffing. Each one of these models is based on staffing.
And then, just so, I know that the furlough days were not caused,
Hold
but
on.
It's a running total of these increases, so this number has to match that number.
No, she was.
So I guess I just want to make sure that whatever happened last year with the estimated number of teachers leaving, how do we know we're not going to have that problem again this year?
So you're talking about like the attrition rate.
Yeah,
So this isn't based on any of the attrition rate. We don't have any calculations in here. We're basically saying that we're not going to use attrition rate at all. So if we do have some teachers leave, that would help the situation.
Oh.
But we're not basing it on that.
Okay, so that's not, last year it was.
Last year it was.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And when do they have to?
So that's good because we have 2 different groups. We have our non-certificated, well, no, our non-conditional, like those that are on a conditional license. Those are May 1st. And then all other employees who are tenured, we have to let them know by, what is it, Michael? June 15th?
Yes, June.
June 15th.
Okay.
So, but that's an important factor because last year, we were waiting on attrition and waiting on that attrition and didn't get it. And so we missed the deadline to be able to pretty much do RIFs for staff, which is a reduction in force. And so because they're protected after a certain period of time.
So if we were considering that, we'd have to have it done before May 1st.
For our, for our conditional certs. So we have 2 different, we have people who are tenured and people who are
Right.
not tenured. And so those that are not tenured, we have to let them know by May 1st. Those that are tenured.
June
it's
15th.
Yeah, it's a little bit different process.
There's 2 dates.
So anything that you see on here as relates to kind of line item by line item, if you want to ask any questions about it, but all of these only represent increases to that line item. So for instance, AP exams, we have an increase of $40,000, and that is, based on recent trend data that has gone up because the blueprint allows more opportunity for students to get paid to take not get paid to take it, but for us to pay for them to take it, right? So that's going up. So our line item for AP exams is larger than that. This is just an increase to that line item. Same thing for heating and oil or electricity. You'll notice that those line items are increased. That's not the full line item, that's just an increase to the line item. So the only negative you see in there is your synergistic. So that's actually credited back to, so that's in a line item right now, and we're moving it out of the line item and putting it back into the operating budget to use that elsewhere. And that's the $414,996.
Mr. Dre, you have a question?
Question. Today, there was big legislature at 1 o'clock with the blueprint. Do we have any information on that? I know it's,
Yeah, they're still going, actually.
Okay,
We
are they?
started at 1. We developed a series of panels for testimony where superintendents, we strategized, for lack of better words, to make sure that we got all our points across. So many of my colleagues right now are testifying on given points that we all targeted, that I've already shared with the board that are part of our legislative priorities. But the number one being, do not change the foundation calculation for the foundation monies, because that will negatively impact us. We'll get less money. So that's the leading priority, but there are several other priorities in the course of that, and they likely will go till probably like 6 o'clock or so.
do you know yet what Governor Moore's proposed changes that he was going to bring to the table? Because I know they were talking about him bringing some changes to the table to the blueprint outside of just what you guys are going in there and test, or,
No, that information has not been shared with us.
because that could make a drastic difference here too.
Well, the one change that he was proposing, it was his budget that had the foundation amount changed,
Right.
which could impact us around $1 million.
Right.
Yeah, so it's $163 a student, and then there was a calculation that also took an additional amount per student based on our farms population and also based on our ML population. And those calculations are a little tricky and complicated, but it definitely would take more money away based on the foundation and then those two subcategories.
So when I'm looking at a bunch of the stuff that says safety supplies, custodial supplies, is that just the increase this year?
Those are just increases to
Okay,
those line
that's
items.
just from the inflation and
Yeah.
such like that.
And we take time to look at a 5-year trend, but I will tell you also that COVID has thrown that trend line a little bit. So
Right.
we have to be cautious about that to make sure that we don't have like a false number there. So in some cases, we had to go back further than 5 years and kind of ignore the COVID time in order to get a good trend data. But those are only increases to those line items. Those line items are slightly larger.
Do we have line items that don't have increases too, so we can see the overall budget, like the
Yeah.
entire budget? Because this is a great starting point, but it's not like detailed enough. If we're gonna look at a budget and approve a budget for overall, I'm not saying like toilet paper, 329, I'm not saying that, but this is like a huge overview. Is there something a little bit more detailed that
Well,
we
this
can
is
get
only the
before?
increases, so if you look
Okay.
if you go to the budget that was provided for you last time in the little binder
Right,
thing,
yeah.
it has every individualized account number in there, and so that's every account number that we have. So these are only the account numbers in there that we are
grants.
proposing raises to.
I think that's for the grants. That's the
That's
audit.
the audit.
Yeah, that's the audit, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so right, so your
And
budget
that's for
book
this
has,
upcoming year? Or that's for the current year?
That's the
we're in?
current.
Yeah.
so every single line item is actually listed in there, and the only ones that we're proposing increases to are on here for the
Okay.
summary.
Tracking now.
So just, in 2025, the commissioners gave what was, and you've said it, I just don't
It's
have
okay.
it. What was the total amount they gave us
6.2 million,
over,
maintenance of effort.
okay.
And then they gave us the one.
They gave us 5, and then they gave us another
That was
1.2, so it was
okay.
6.2, yeah. Yeah, after a series of 3 budget meetings. And really, the commissioners, they do those so that they can hear where the needs are and why we need it, instead of us saying, we just need this much money, we need to share with them why. And that's why this budget summary is really good for them, because it shows them exactly where those dollars are going. So they can say, oh, okay, so I know that, 3.6 million is going to salary enhancements. And I know as part of that salary enhancements, we have fixed costs associated with them, and that's a total of $468,000. So the commissioners can see exactly where those monies are going that they're giving us.
And last year, with the 6.2, how much was the shortfall then, and how many exactly, and then how many furlough days were there?
So the total necessary to move forward without any changes at all was 12.
Last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Was 12.7
I had to go
four,
back and look.
I
It was
have to
12
go-
point something.
Yeah.
it was 12 point something million dollars.
The $6 million
And then-
shortfall from.
Yeah, and that was to
Federal government.
completely stay whole 100%.
So that left the 1 point whatever left over, and that's what the furlough days come.
Exactly. Well, we did do some other cuts to the budget. Like, as I said, we took out, a $500,000 textbook line item. So we did other cuts. We also froze positions. We didn't backfill some positions. So we did a lot of position control in combination and got down to 4 furlough days.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So if
So that the budget deficit was larger than just 4 furlough days,
okay.
if that helps.
So if we were to go in all in for the 9.9, and if, based on what they've done previously, or what they did last year with the 6.2, somewhere between option B and C, just to kind of put it into perspective, that would be like roughly 30 some odd positions they would be
Right.
talking about?
Yeah, if you look at it, we basically use a marker of $100,000 per position. And so obviously that's about 10 positions for every $1 million that you're looking at in a budget.
Okay.
And so yes, that's a good way to look at it. That if it falls in between there, that obviously your number's going to fall right in between there of how many staff members total.
And they're, obviously the commissioners are aware of the shortfall.
Yes,
Okay.
very aware. They are very well versed on the blueprint. They understand it extremely well. They actually frequently are in Annapolis testifying as well. Well, our commissioner, Jack, happens to be the president of their association, like you guys have an association for MABE, Maryland Association for Boards of Education, so do commissioners, and he is currently the president, so he's very, very well versed on, and has been a part of the Kerwin Commission since it started. So he has a wealth of knowledge and clearly understands that why we're here. We're here because the state has not, come up with their end of the money to support this blueprint initiative. And so we need to fix that concept of either slow down some of the initiatives and pause them for a period of time until funding can catch up to them, or change the law to say that we're not going to do that initiative or part of the blueprint, but something has to change because it cannot continue to just all fall on the commissioners.
Without the, what is it, is it 1.5 or 1.6 if this passes, that would affect our overall budget? That, is it, we're talking about, okay, so you look confused.
I think, keep going.
Okay, so if that happens, where was I going with this?
Where's that money going to come from?
No, oh, sorry.
What else do we
The
have to
state,
do?
the shortfall of the state, how much is the shortfall that the state should be providing that they don't? Is there a number? Like, are they shorting us 3 million? Are they shorting us 4? Are they shorting us
Yeah.
2? Like, what is that number that we're trying to
There
get them
was,
to pay their fair share?
I think I shared with the board a clip from Jack, and he actually went through every document and showed the total numbers.
Okay.
And so I would encourage
Just to
going back
understand.
and looking,
Okay.
because it would be exactly what we would need to move forward. I don't remember what it is, so I
Okay.
don't want to quote it.
That's fine.
But
I
it
can
was
watch the
like,
video.
this makes sense if they give their part, because the commissioners know that they value education here, and they're more than willing to give their part. I mean, they are 8th in the ranking, so there's 24 districts, and our commissioners rank 8th of how much money they give to our county. So they're typically 7th or 8th, they bounce around, 7th one year, 8th the next year, but they're always right there of how much. So they're in a positive, very close to the top 5 of how much they actually provide education compared to all of the other districts. But unfortunately, because the state gives us very little money, when it looks at ranking by how much we spend per student, we are usually either the bottom or the 23rd. So we jump back and forth, 23rd or 24th. So we spend the least amount of money to educate our students here in Queen Anne's County, but our commissioners give us almost, 8.
And,
Does that
and,
make, it's hard to
no,
understand.
no,
but-
and does the determination of how much our per pupil spending is based on,
The wealth calculation
Okay.
of the districts.
Like Baltimore is number 1, ranked number 1. They get the most out of
Like
any-
$23,000, more than $23,000 a
of
student.
any of the 24 entities. But if you look at the performance of the students, they usually rank at the bottom. Whereas
We're
we
the
rank in
exact opposite.
we are always at the worst in the top 10.
Yeah.
We've been in the top 5
Mostly in the
for
top
how our
5.
students perform
But we're
on
not.
their test
Right.
and, all of those things. So we're always performing high students, but we are at the bottom for what we get from the state and the federal government. Because we're such a wealthy county, according to the calculations.
Very well said.
So if the state does not fund the blueprint, can we cut from those programs specifically? I know we're not supposed to, and supposedly we
Right.
lose all funding, right? Isn't that what they're
So,
threatening, or?
And that's like the best question ever, to be honest with you, because a lot of people don't understand that the blueprint is actually a law. So if we don't implement the things in the blueprint, then we're breaking the law.
It went into law
Yeah.
a couple years ago.
So interestingly enough, the first time in history in the state of Maryland where like a law
mandates.
dictates, the law actually dictates how much money we have to pay our teachers, right? At a base salary of $60,000 by, FY '26, by whatever it is.
July 1st of
July
26.
1st, right. So, yeah, it's the first time breaking history that we have a law that's really dictating specific things. But then we don't have a funding source to support that. And we do, and I don't want to say that the blueprint is an unfunded mandate. We've heard that a lot. It's an underfunded mandate. Because we do, for national board certification, which we have a lot of teachers that are participating currently that have already gotten their national board certifications, which is fantastic. But when it looks at reimbursement, we only get reimbursed 40% for every single teacher that's getting that benefit. So where does that money come from? And, the state, I think, and Dr. Kibler can agree with me or not, I think the state would say, or the AIB, which is your Accountability Implementation Board, would say, it's in your foundation money. It's in your foundation money. But it's not. There's not enough money there for us to do it. Our budget lines have to grow in order to meet those needs. We have more kids taking dual enrollment. Fantastic, a great thing, but it costs more. We have more kids taking AP. We have more teachers being nationally board certified. We have more pre-K students than we've ever had before. These are all really positive things, but each one of them comes with a price tag.
Are we meeting all of the blueprints? Like, are we up to speed? Okay.
We are.
Are we like the only county, one a few, or how do we, like, are most of them?
No.
Everybody.
Everybody.
pretty much.
Everybody's
Yeah.
basically up to,
Yep.
okay, so.
Yeah, there's still that one or two that are behind.
They're all
People-
conditionally approved now.
Correct.
Yeah, but I will say though that not all of them have a guaranteed contractual signed document for their salaries. So many of the districts are currently in negotiations right now, and so may or may not make that $60,000 depending on how their negotiations go.
So do we have anything we need to accomplish, like, next year for the blueprint, or we're, okay?
No.
All right.
Well, just keep doing what we're doing.
Let's keep what,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly,
all right,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
As long as they don't add the,
Yeah, so I mean, like
Okay.
this year, we have to work on level 4 of the career ladder,
Defining.
terms to that, but I mean, we're.
but we should be okay money-wise, like it shouldn't, I mean, not okay, but we know
Right,
what
well,
we
we
need.
know-
We know what we need to
We know what we need, that's
maintain
exactly
it.
right. And that was the point in working with the commissioners last year, that we projected out and we said, we need 7.5, and anything the state gives us would come off of that, right? But the state's not giving us anything at all. And then you have your insurance where the county, as well as we did, budgeted in 7.5% increase, but we are now at 10% increase. So those slight things will add to that bottom line. And that's no surprising, and that happens every year. If you'll see in this budget summary, some of these costs that we have no control over, specifically like your MABE insurance, workman's compensation, your MABE insurance, property and liability, those are all costs we have absolutely no control over, but we have to add them. So some of those things that we don't really, we have a hard time predicting those, would have impacted the $7.5 million projection that we offered to the commissioners as an estimate of what we would need.
Question, what is the laptop lease? Is that line item, it's just showing a $50,000 increase for 26's laptop lease, high school special ed and faculty. Is that,
So we currently have a lease, and that is your percentage increase to that lease payment. So we do payments for, so instead of buying them outright, which would cost us over $1 million ticket, we actually do a lease with them over 4 years, and then we own them. So it's kind of like when you're leasing a car and at the end, you're like, yeah, it's mine now, and I walk away. It's kind of the same type of thing, but in that you have a percentage that increases throughout that.
So that increases the $50,000.
It increases to $50,000, right? And that would be for the year, not just like per month or anything.
So
Go ahead.
with the different options and the different amounts of positions that could be eliminated depending on budgets, summary, what positions, where would that start from? What would that look like?
Now, I feel like I have to be careful because I don't, certainly want to call out individual positions where we only have one or two people in that position, so therefore they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. I will just share with you that it would come from everywhere, from central office, from schools, from support to admin to CERT teachers. So it's going to come from everywhere. When you have to do cuts like that, you are going to have to, everybody's going to have to take a little bit, right? So some of that may, as that came up before, I mean, right now, I guess we have about 10 retirements, probably more than that. We probably have about 5 resignations who are saying, hey, I'm going to somewhere else or whatever. Those are going to be calculated in that. Those are already natural attrition that we can use, although I say that cautiously because some of those we have like 5 administrators who are retiring. So we have to replace those, but we will likely replace those with people right within our district. So if we can eliminate a position in a school and that person can be promoted to another position that we can't do without, a principal, an assistant principal type thing, then that's what we'll do. So we've already started to look at these models and already started to build those cuts. Yep.
I have a question. In talking about cuts, my concern, not only as a parent, would be that the schools would be placed under more duress with the prospect of losing any more teachers. So is that like last year, no teachers had to be let go, it was all based via the furlough days, excuse me.
That's not 100% accurate.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, because we did freeze positions, and, did what we call position control. So say, for instance, we had a guidance counselor that left and we were able to make that work through other services in that school, then that position's still there, but we didn't fill it because we had someone else who was able to do those responsibilities, but that position's still in our budget. So those are some things that we have to look at. But yeah, I don't know that that's a completely accurate.
I don't know. I guess my concern is that since we are dealing with the children and we are dealing with education and we are dealing with teachers wanting to be, obviously reduce class sizes and things like that, not to say that is the focus of the current budget, but definitely not to make it worse. I guess my concern is, and I don't know if I'm articulating it correctly, is I am just fearful that we are going to lose more teachers to just the budget cuts. So I guess my question is when you're talking about things being dispersed evenly throughout the district from all different aspects of it, do you avoid going and dealing with is that the last place that you would think is appropriate to go?
Not necessarily, because we look at, so in your folder, you'll see an enrollment document that articulates enrollment through each of the schools. The board had requested this information, I believe, at maybe the last meeting. You also see in there an active employee org chart, for lack of better words. I know you referred to it as an org chart. We refer to it as an active employee list. So that list is in here.
You see it?
And there's two tabs. One is their summary. I do caution you about just to be aware that these are real people behind these numbers. And so if you're at a very small school and you say, well, that 3rd grade, class, people are going to know exactly who you're talking about. So I caution you as you ask questions to try to keep that in mind so that we don't alarm, particular staff members. But this does articulate all the positions within, and we would look at this to determine this based on the enrollment is how we determine where the cuts would be, if that makes sense to you. So, you know, hold on, I'm trying to go back to it.
Just to verify, you're still working on the other org chart that we discussed the other day?
If you,
This is-
did you look at the active employee?
You talking about the one you sent this one?
No, the folder I emailed I shared with everybody right as the meeting began.
Okay. It's got like the 3 o'clock one with all the different times?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Has all
And if you
the-
go to the bottom one, the active employees, and then there's 2 tabs, so you have just the running list and then the summary chart, this is
Okay.
classification. So I believe that takes care of that request.
Yeah,
If it's
not-
not,
not-
please let me know. But that's the first attempt to.
I'll take it, thank you.
Yeah, and as I said, with the class size, you can see the class size averages there, you can see them.
And that's on the other spreadsheet is the other board request, which
Class sizes.
when
Right.
I did the enrollment summary presentation and shared, like, we put 2 slides in there about class sizes in the district, it was brought up, can we see this by school? So that's the back end calculations that went into that by school.
Right. And so, you know, when you look at the enrollment piece of things, you have to really remember like where you are in what school, because some of our schools are very small. So for example, I'm not going to call the school out, but in one of the examples of our schools, we have 2 teachers in that grade level, and there's a student ratio of 19, or a ratio of 9.50. You know, you have to know that there's some perspective behind that. And so we need to ask good questions before we assume that, oh my gosh, this has such a, you know, why does this one have such a low one and somebody else has a higher one? If you look at,
The preschool does jump out, obviously,
It does.
but the preschool are the blended 3-year-old programs for students with special
so
needs.
that's what I mean, there's some things on here you might go, oh my gosh, that class size is so low, but please, you know, ask the question because we can share with you why that is the case.
Right.
Or like you might see a ratio of 18 and you're like, that seems smaller than, you know, 22 or whatever, but there's only 2 teachers. If you pulled 1 teacher, then you have 1 teacher teaching 36 kids, which wouldn't be possible. So, you know, I ask when you look at this to maybe jot down some questions that you may have so that we can help you to understand it, because it can be overwhelming.
Matt, when you asked for a flow chart, was it of the schools or of the central office staff as well?
I wanted to see each school
Okay,
and the central office.
okay, so we still need the central office.
It's on here.
Oh.
Yeah,
It's under the summary chart.
It's-
the
it's-
different one.
yeah, the central office.
Not quite the org chart that I was looking at or thinking. The one that had the org chart with the bubbles is kind of what I was looking for, but like
Yeah, but it
with
doesn't
this
have it.
information
Yeah, it does.
in that, which I know it takes time, but
Oh, that's
we
not
talked
up.
about it Monday,
Oh,
so
it's right up here.
Um,
Sorry, this is it. I can't see.
I'll
There we go.
search through this and if I have questions, I can.
Yeah, so, you know, the central office can also be deceiving, and I'll pick a couple of examples, like, you'll see 4 teacher specialists for math, you'll see 4 teacher specialists for reading. Those positions, even though they say they're under central office, they're actually in the schools 100% of the time. It's just they're not attached to a school because they're in multiple schools.
Right.
So, you know, there's probably more than a third, it's probably half. I could go down through each one of them and share with you. Again, I don't want to, if there's just one, I certainly don't want to call that one out because then we're talking about individual staff members and I don't think that's appropriate for open session. But certainly would be happy to meet and go through and say who actually is in this building or who is serving the schools. Like full-time serving the schools, meaning, because we all serve the schools, obviously.
Yeah, I guess we're just all worried, what Kendra was saying about taking anybody else out of classrooms and schools from what we've heard. I guess, I mean, we've lost, reading specialists, right? Are we going to have them back? Is that?
Well, we moved to a district-wide model, and so that's where you see there's 8 teacher specialists that look like they're here at the central office, but they're actually in the schools. So we have 4 reading specialists and 4 math specialists, but they're county specialists, so they serve multiple schools.
where they used to be in each school.
That's exactly right.
And we can't get back to that. I mean,
There's
there's
no way we can get back to that next
Well-
year, not with this unless,
Less money falls out of the sky and we get more.
I know,
we
I
can
guess,
hire
I guess
more.
some, I mean, some things are just really important though. I mean, we know what a huge reading problem we have, and
Right.
I mean, I just don't feel like we can take any resources from, we
if
can't
we-
take anybody.
We asked for the full amount, that's no elimination,
that's
right?
no elimination, but it wouldn't add in teacher
The-
specialists to
yeah.
every. It would
But it
keep what
would
we
see-
have
it would
right
keep
now.
everybody that we have now.
It would keep everything that we have right now.
And people are working multiple jobs per se, right? Because
Right.
they're covering other things. So even if we somehow got everything funded, we'd still have people doing,
Multiple
It
jobs.
would keep us exactly where we are right now.
Where do special educators fall on these charts?
They would be within the teacher ranks within the schools.
So like a teacher specialist?
No,
Just-
so like if you're just looking at Ken Island Elementary, there would be where it says 30 teachers,
Okay.
the special educators would be built into that.
Right, they're identified
Assigned to
as a
that school.
teacher.
They're not called out as a special ed teacher.
No.
They're just teachers.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
I just was curious. I was just trying to see. I had, someone had reached out about a school and them not having a special educator for a certain grade. And I just was looking to see at the school.
We
So if it's in
actually
there.
have a special ed staffing plan that is approved by the board. Actually, 2 of our board members approved our most recent staffing plan, and I'm happy to share that with everyone. Carrie, if you can make a note of that, please, for me. Happy to share that with you, what's approved, and it does share how many teachers, where they're at. It's all based on enrollment. And that's why it changes every year, because it's always based on enrollment. And I will also share that we have an additional, Sid, correct me if I'm wrong, 32 additional special education transportation requests this current school year.
It's up to 35 right now.
Oh, it's 35.
We just, when I met with Mr. Murdoch this morning, we had additional 3 students.
So we're at 35 additional special education transportation requests for this current school year.
That's correct.
That's students coming to our schools as well as the schools over the bridge.
Yes, it's students that have transferred into our school system, or quite a few of them are pre-K students, pre-K 3 and 4 students this year that have the SE 16 that require us to transport them on our buses.
And how many additional buses did we put in to the fleet this year just to accommodate
We have
special
put
education?
two more, and we're right now stretched as far as we can to the max. I mean, because not only are you picking up students for, say, just say Churchill Elementary School, you might be picking up students that attend like a regional program here in Centerville. So, you're picking a student up from Churchill area, transporting them all the way, to Centerville. If we can combine buses, we obviously combine buses, but there's some, especially with the, some of our homeless population that we're also required by law to transport, that, adds another whole layer on there of transportation. We've seen a significant increase this year in special needs transportation.
So one of the things that we hear a lot is that we need to be more transparent about where the money's going and what we're spending it on. But what people need to understand is we can cut out a bus so that we can hire more teachers, but then how do we legally get our children from where they are to those teachers? It's not necessarily 100% a one-for-one. It's a district, and we have to do what's best for the children in that district to bring them into the schools to be educated. So it's not just throw this out the window because we need that money over here. Those affect different things. Now, there are things that we can reduce, things that we can cut. We need to look at those and talk about those. And I wanted to ask Mr. Dreyer, you said you spent quite a lot of time on the cards. Were there things that stood out to you that could be removed, reduced?
So we talked quite a bit Monday on the cards too. Mr. Pender clarified a bunch of the stuff that and so did Dr. Kibler. There's still some things that I feel like are luxury items that things are being spent on when we are on a ramen noodle budget. If people don't know that's an analogy, we are on a very tight budget. We're making cuts, but I do find some of the things still being like, as a whole, I know it gets budgeted for certain folks to spend as they see what's needed for certain things. I just implore folks to look at it and be like, is this an absolute necessity? Is this an absolutely needed for what we're trying to accomplish? Or can we get by with what we have? Or is this a luxury item? I know it might be onesie, twosie, or a couple grand here, a couple thousand there, but after you start adding that up to different things, that can add up to $100,000 or $200,000, eventually maybe $1 million. I'm just throwing random numbers out there, but that's little things that's a couple more positions that we don't have to let go, or a couple more things that we can do. It looks like we're still spending some money on like items that, yes, they're great for the classroom. They enhance the classroom. They enhance the learning, the morale for the teachers and the staff. Completely agree with it. I'm not saying there's like absurd spending. I'm just saying I feel like there's still some luxury items being purchased that I wouldn't say luxury like, hey, we're going to get, a Mercedes instead of a Toyota Camry. I'm just saying there's some items that aren't necessities at this point that I've seen. And we discussed that extensively. And is it going to make a huge difference and fix our budget? No, it's not. But it can make a minute difference where it saves a couple positions possibly. And I feel like we should implore the folks that are about to go spend the money, they stop and look at it. I know it can be approved and I understand their reasoning behind it, but they should stop and be like, is this an absolute must? If I don't do this $1,000 spending 12 times throughout the year, I save 12 grand, but we have 15 other teachers that do it, or folks. See how it adds up? Those are the little things that I see that we can, like I said, it's not going to fix the budget, but it will make a difference after you add up so many purchases.
Okay.
And that's my biggest thing, was imploring folks to actually double check, stop, look at it, and see if it's a necessity at this point in time. In 4 years or 5 years, when the budget's different and we're back on track, we can implement that stuff back in because it does make a difference. But at this point in time, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel right now.
You guys want a choice from us tonight or next week? The board members want to go around and say what they think and then everybody discuss it?
I don't understand why we wouldn't ask for what we need.
I mean, I feel the same way. We can't afford to lose any more people. We've already seen the consequences of it. And, I mean, we can only ask. They can say yes or they can say no at this point.
So then what we should be doing is planning what happens when we don't get what we ask for.
Right.
Because there's no guarantee that just because we ask for it, we're going to get it.
Right.
And I will tell you that our team has already started to prepare for all of these models.
Okay.
Not the 0, but the 3. that we-
Please God, not the
Not
zero.
the 0.
I do
but
have a quick
we have
question.
started to prepare for the
This
other.
state revenue, the 1.4 million increase. If Governor Moore does what he wants to do, we're not even getting a 1.4 million increase.
That's exactly right.
Right. So that's in every model that I've seen. So that's not even I understand what you're trying to accomplish, but at the end of the day, we don't even know if that 1.4 million is coming. We might actually
We do right now until
They say
they
they're
say
not.
differently.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I
we
think
won't
we
know,
need to be
we won't know
careful.
until April, and that could turn around
Could
and
we
put us
be,
in another.
could we be in a position where, let's just say we say, okay, we're gonna need the full kit and caboodle, and then it passes, and we're short 1.6, would it be back to furloughs?
No, not necessarily. No, I would not go, that would be the last resort.
Okay.
I think we have other options than that as it relates to enrollment and in staffing. So
Okay.
that would be staffing controls.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I do agree with Matt, like, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here. I think moving forward for next year, we need to tighten the belt at every angle because it's, like he said, they may be great necessities, but it's either, do you need that necessity or next year, do you need to fire a teacher? And I think it's going to have to be tough decisions, either way.
Because every
So are
time
you
we've been on
gonna
a
let us-
budget thing and we've sat with you, everybody says staff. At the SSIC, you know,
They
the
do,
C, everybody says
absolutely.
staff, the budget round says
100%,
staff.
you're accurate.
So at the same time, like, everybody that is making purchases, and I'm just talking district-wide, if we can curb some of them purchases, that's more bodies in your school. That's more, that could be a person.
It's not 100% one for one.
I'm just saying it could be. If you saved $75,000, that could be an extra assistant in there. I'm saying it,
So.
I'm not
but-
saying it's
and-
one for one, but
But because you're making a generalized statement that's gonna make people think that we're not doing this right. The reason why I say it's not 100% one for one, what type of money is it that they're spending? Is it money that came from the PTA account? That's not our money. We have no control over that.
I'm tracking that. I'm not, I'm
But that's-
talking in general terms. I understand
we
we
need
have
to-
different funding from PTA, we got different funding from grants. I understand things like that. But I'm just
But
saying,
I-
I would implore folks to look at the spending overall and just be more cognizant of the money that they are spending because it could help in the future. Could help in the future. I understand it's not a one for one because I understand we get grants and it has to be spent on certain things and certain items.
So then the second thing I'm gonna ask is, since you did the extensive look, can you provide that to the rest of us so we can have a conversation as to where we're going to say, we think maybe you should not spend so much in that area?
I've looked at just November. So if we want a deep dive, I would have to look at not just the P cards, but everything in the entire thing. And I don't know if people want us to be doing that.
I would like
because
to
I
just
think there's
kind of-
extensive, there's other things that could be done that we don't even know about. That's why I said we would just implore folks to be more cognizant. I'm not trying to sit here and nitpick at them. I'm just saying there's some purchases that we just, maybe they stop and look at it before, hey, maybe we decide to go with this route and that one because it saved some money. If you wanna go in and have examples and deep dive, then we have to open up the books and go the entire year and deep dive line by line. If you wanna sit down with me for hours on hours and do it, I'm more than happy to do that with you. But if you want to say, just have people be cognizant of their spending because it can make a difference and it adds up at the end of every year, we can go that route.
And I appreciate that, and we have done that during our A&S meetings. Those are all your supervisors, all your principals, and we've talked about that. Last year, we did a 10% reduction of their block grants to their schools, which is really under the discretion of the principal. So that's their day-to-day operations funding that they get. We did a 10% reduction, which means just what you said, that, you know, a teacher might not be able to buy X, Y, and Z because of that 10% reduction, because those monies go right into their classrooms at their discretion. And I appreciate that. I think that we should be saying, I think, and everybody realizes this, because we say it every time we meet for A&S, which is our administrators and supervisors, you know, the budget is tight. We need to watch what we're spending. We need to make sure that we're only doing what we absolutely have to do. But I think bringing it forward is a great suggestion.
What do the administrator, because I look at it like this, if somebody, I don't know why there would be any criticism on everyone trying to be more fiscally responsible within their area. I'm not saying they shouldn't spend money, it's like it takes a village. Every little bit, as Matt says, helps. What is the feedback from the administrative, like with your principals and stuff, when they had the reduction? Were they like, it's what we have to do? Or were they frustrated?
They're
or?
a fantastic group of people to work with. They understand it. We talk about it all the time. We're very open. We talk about the challenges and talk about strategies of how do we, of course, everybody's frustrated because, you know, our budget is heavy with this blueprint recommendations or requirements. I think that they're all team players though, and they understand it and they get it and they work around it. And they also use other resources and partnerships in the community to help support them. I mean, we just had, and actually I'm going to be recognizing it in our next meeting, but we just had a community partner come in and pay off one of our lunch accounts. So, you know,
awesome.
right. So I will publicly recognize them. I just don't have my materials with me right now at our next meeting. But we reach out. We have partners out there that help us, and we have supportive parents, supportive PTAs, supportive athletic groups, and fundraisers. And so everybody pitches in, And they just know it's a tough time right now, and we're a community, and we are a family that help each other.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I was only asking the question for clarification for myself, because in the past conversations we've had about P cards, I had not been aware that there were conversations directly from you with them about reduction in the grant, the funding, or the block grant stuff. So
Absolutely.
that's just something, I didn't know how that operated.
Yeah, and we actually talked about including another percentage in here that would reflect in a positive, just like your synergistic for the block grants, and decided against it because we feel like they are down to bare bones. They didn't have big budgets to begin with, and we took 10%. So, you know.
I was going to say, like, we spend about $1.5 million a year on materials of instruction. That's the supplies, like, in the classroom.
Yeah.
So I think it was about $500,000 or $600,000 for the block grant. So that's divided up amongst the 14 schools for the principals to use as they see fit in discussions with their teachers. So we cut that 10%. The rest of that money is the textbooks and things that we order for the schools out of this building. So it's not a lot to operate that academic program when you talk about the spending there. I mean, it adds up and it equates to positions, but when you talk the software that runs those academic programs, we're probably looking at about $2 million total to run the district, the actual
Yeah.
learning in the classroom.
If there is a surplus in any one of the categories with the proposed increase that we might expect, what happens? Does that just go in, if it says $50,000, it's going to increase in an area and it's only 40? Does that 10 go back to the fund balance? Or
Yeah, it's
okay.
just like a big bucket, believe
Okay.
it or not. Like, so you have all these buckets in this big, and whatever doesn't get used just gets dumped right back in. And back in the days where we were, our budget was more flush, I would say, that ends up to be your fund balance. And then you use your fund balance at the end of the year. Sometimes it rolls over to create like a little fund balance in case you have an emergency, like elevator goes down or whatever, or you do some small projects in the schools, or buy maybe some supplies, like for instance, novels or something that, we haven't been able to buy during the year. So we would use that money at the end of the year.
And what is our current fund balance?
It's not, we don't have any fund balance.
We used
Are
it
we
last year to
required
help.
by law to have between 1 and
We had to vote, change our policy. 'cause
Yeah, we had to
used
change
our
ours.
fund
1 year
balance.
then? Okay.
Yeah, we used it to cover, and so if we hadn't, would have had 6 or 7 furlough days as opposed to the 4. We used it to offset as much as we could so we could reduce that amount.
By law, we have to have a balanced budget. Law doesn't state that we have to have a fund balance. The board's policy states that we would keep a fund balance between 2 to 5%, I think it is. Is it 1 to 5?
I think it's 1 to 5.
Okay,
I looked
I'm
it up.
sorry, I
didn't-
don't remember,
yeah.
but-
Yeah, I did look it up
Well, and
because I was wondering.
back earlier days in Maryland, in many districts, the commissioners would give you a budget, and then if you had fund balance, something left over, you gave it back to the commissioners. That was, and then.
Wouldn't that be nice?
But slowly, they started to say, hey, you keep it and do some things in-house that you need to do, whether it's by, as I said, novels or do something, a small project in a school or something. So they've given us the liberty to keep that very small amount of money and use it for, if there's a big emergency that comes up that wasn't necessarily budgeted for.
Dr. Kibler, so if we're getting rid of all the textbook purchases, what are we doing instead? Because there's like no line item for last year.
It's
We're not using books anymore?
It's basically watching just the new purchases and then working on renegotiating contracts rather than like necessarily paying up front. Like if like a 5-year deal on English curriculum for middle school or something like that, it's renegotiating with vendors to go like on a year-by-year basis, something like that. So this is not reducing and taking anything away. It's
Oh, okay. Okay.
What's the difference between an administrative secretary and just a regular secretary?
Excuse me, the administrative secretaries are the secretaries that serve the superintendent and the assistant superintendent.
So they're at every school?
I think it's 12-month to 10-month.
Back up. Those are the executive administrative secretaries. At each school, they do have an administrative secretary. Those are 12-month positions, and the regular secretaries are 10-month positions that are here when the students are here. And the administrative secretaries are there during the entire 12-month period that the school office is open and in session.
A lot of times, like, your financial secretaries, they're there all year long because they do a lot of the purchasing in the summer that impacts during the school year. But most of those positions are financial positions. You also have the assistants to your principals would be considered 12-month employees.
Do the finance clerks work with the accountants in the finance office?
Yes, they're all together, and we only have the accountability person that's on their team that basically does their software and those types of things. He's the only one that's not housed with the whole finance department. But that will change when we move to the new building. They'll all be in the same area.
So we actually have 4 people working in that office right now, or
I don't know
within
what you're
that team,
referring to. I don't know which team you're.
for the
referring to.
financial office.
We actually have 11 people altogether with, yeah,
Not bodies down there right now.
well, we have a new accounting position that's not there yet. And then
I'm
we
just trying to-
have the supervisor that the board was notified of. So that, those are 2. 2 in payroll, grants,
Yes,
accounts payable.
Yeah,
It's
there's
11.
9, there's 9 right now.
There's 9 right now, but 11 as of
Positions.
March 3rd, yes. Mhm.
Why did the substitutes go up so much? I think it's like 675 to 925.
Yeah, because we were constantly overspending in that category, and so we righted it up last year, and I think we're on target right now. I know we're on target right now, so, but also, we have seen a greater attendance rate from teachers than we've ever seen before after COVID. So we see them using more leave after COVID than they did prior to COVID. So I think the combination of that and not increasing that line item and actually reflecting actuals is what we call. So now we feel that it reflects actual.
Okay, because there was a rumor about there being a shortage of money, so this would cover that hopefully for the,
Yeah, so
coming
we
year.
basically shared with our staff right out of the gate that we put more money in here, but we've consistently gone over every single year, and we are in a budget crisis and cannot go over this year. So whatever you have to do, make sure that you only get a substitute when you really, really need a substitute. And sometimes, you know, things get crossed. You know, I heard this from one of the principals that, you know, things got crossed and a substitute actually showed up. You can't send them away. So now we had a substitute in a building that really probably wasn't necessary that day. So those are some things that we can tighten up, and so that's what we've been working on. And that doesn't happen often. I'm just using that as an example. And things like that, you know, it happens, some mistakes are made and the communications get crossed, but we want to make sure that those things don't. So we really came out of the gate this year and said, hey, we put more money in there. We cannot go over because there's no money to make up
Okay.
if we go over in that category.
Great discussion.
So
Any other?
my count this properly, there's 9 secretaries in the central office alone?
I'd have to count them. I mean, hold on, let me do that for you.
If you're going by department, basically one position.
One
per
position per
department,
each department.
roughly. CNI has,
That's 2.
yeah.
Is there intentions to cut any programs, or anything from, any programs or anything outside of just like funding or budgets or anything that, are there any programs that we're looking at eliminating or removing because of the budget crisis? Any of the CTE programs, are we going to remove some of the extracurricular activities? Is there any programs that have been discussed that have looked at to being removed?
We haven't looked at removing any. We have had the discussion of pay to play. We've had that discussion and started doing some research on what that looks like. And
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm shaking my head.
I mean, like, we've had that discussion. We have
About
not.
like pay to play sports and pay to play like marching band and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, exactly.
That's absurd.
They do that in a lot of districts,
I
so
know,
we
yeah.
have looked at that in case that comes down to, if the board came to us and said, we don't want you to cut positions, we want you to cut programs, we could offer that as a solution to that. Not saying that we're going to do that, but we're trying to be prepared for different options for the board. We have not looked at cutting any CTE programs. We have one program that through its own, yeah.
Right.
It's, it's kind of, that program just isn't viable anymore, so we're changing that.
Just
but
making sure we
haven't-
haven't gone down that road because we
No.
don't need to cut programs. I'm not for it. I want to keep
No,
as
we're
many.
not,
I don't want
we
to.
don't, all of our
Right.
extracurriculars are, we've now moved away from PFY. We now have partnerships with the Boys and Girls Club and the Edge, so we're not in that business anymore. No, we don't have any, we have not discussed cutting any programs from students.
I was going to say, if anything, I think the bus money has gone down and a lot of other funding for athletics has gone down, but we still fund the bare minimum, it seems like. But there's a lot of fundraising that has to happen. We definitely don't want to pay to play. We'll just let fundraising and boosters continue to cover
Yeah.
the
I don't
sports.
agree with that
But-
because a lot of kids can't.
Right.
They're already buying their own cleats or some stuff like that. Trying to pay to play is, to me, is absurd. Because that is, some of these kids, that's the only way they get off the streets and they can afford
Well,
it or get out of their house in bad situations, or it's lifelong connections as well as life learning lessons that they can carry with them for the rest of their lives.
Right. Well, anything that we do, we always base it on our farm's population getting support. So if a student couldn't afford something, they would be able to play, and we would make that work. With everything we do, we always bring in the farm's model and say, who can't participate for what reason, and how do we support them so they can participate? So there would never be an opportunity where a student wouldn't be able to participate based on their financial situation.
And I would add, that our administration agrees with the comments of the board here that we shouldn't cut the programs.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
why you're not seeing it.
No,
And
no,
it-
I was just making sure we were
Yeah,
there. That's
but it's also, that's a huge impact on families, obviously, to then make up for maybe one position or two positions, like you
Right.
talk about a pay to play. So when you talk about that trade-off, we don't think it's worth it, like you all are saying
We
too.
don't think it's worth it, but we also want to be prepared if somebody in our community asks us and say, how come you're not doing this? Well, this is exactly what it would, give us, and are we getting a bang for a buck there? And the answer would be no, but we want to make sure that we're prepared for that.
Question, who, I assume it's you, in terms of all the positions in the central office, when we're talking about necessity and all that stuff, how and when are all the positions within the central office determined to be necessary to effectively run this district? And are those positions obviously still part of possibly cutting out? Like, is there an objective of looking at all the administrative, all the instructional, like everybody there? How do you all handle that as a district? I've never been in this before. I've never been in a budget crisis before. I'm just asking the question in general, like, if everyone's on the table and changes are going to happen from the top to the bottom, not how and when, does the central office and everyone that's housed in there, are they looked at objectively in terms of running the accounting?
They are, absolutely. Everybody would take a cut. This year, we reduced an executive team member, we reduced an instructional supervisor, we reduced an accountability person. So yeah, we have, and we'll continue to look at. But as I said, I'm more than happy. I can't do it in an open session because they're individual people and we could put names to them. But I'm more than happy to tag every person in the central office that does not serve here, they're in schools every single day. So obviously, like, your finance people are here every single day, right? An executive administrator is, Carrie's here every single day. But a lot of these positions, like your teacher specialist, are in schools every single day. So cutting their position wouldn't help the schools, it would hurt the schools.
Understood.
Even though they're listed as a central office employee.
Okay.
So the growth that was at the board office, it seems like there was a little bit of growth in the last several years. Are a lot of those positions ones that go out to the schools, or do they?
I don't know about the growth because we've done mostly cutting. We cut as I said, we cut an executive team member, an instructional supervisor, an accountability person, a communications person, the PIO person. I mean, I could sit here, you know what I mean?
Wow, okay.
We've cut a lot of positions. The only positions that we
Put in
put into
correctly, I
place, we put a school safety person in place, which I think I can't imagine not functioning with that position, to be honest with you, and had a hard time understanding why we didn't have a full-time person that's solely based on making our schools and central office a safe place to be. We've added one maintenance person,
We have a total of 11,
11, right? And
18 buildings. If you look at the state, what the state ratio is, we should have 23.
I'm trying to think, I don't know that we've added an additional person from there. It's off my head.
We also cut one in distributing services.
Yes, we cut one, that's right, cut one in distributing services.
That cut just this year?
Yes. But several of those positions were cut prior to this year.
4 or 5 of what you just listed were all this year.
Yes. So,
I guess
yes,
it's reassuring to know that you are going to look at everything. Nobody's excluded from
Nobody's
the
excluded.
cuts.
We absolutely,
That's-
every single year, do what we consider position control. Where is the need? Where do we need to shift people? Or where do we need to eliminate positions? Every single year in every area. The only place that we haven't, that I have kind of held strong is with special ed. Like regardless, we have not cut any positions. I won't entertain cutting positions, not even at the central office. And the only place really that we've focused energies on putting new positions in actually is the finance. I should have said that. In finance, we've added an accountant and we were adding another accountant. So we have put some energy in that area.
But in one of those cases, it was a repurposed position within the department as well.
That's very true because we
It's
took
really only adding like one new one over
yeah,
the 4
that's
years
very
we've been
true. We
here.
took a position from a different department and supported our finance department with that position.
Summer school's good for the summer? I see the increase in that.
Yeah, that's something that we're struggling with right now to determine how can we how do we get the best bang for our buck in looking at, because our transportation costs are significant as it relates to our summer school offerings. And we're looking at what kind of models can we use? So we're investigating right now. Matt, if you want to add, I know your team's been working on that, looking at what does the model look like for this summer?
So there's some credit recovery options that you can do online. So would we potentially not really bring students to campus for that over the summer to cut down on that transportation cost a little bit? But that would be another one of the programs that we would discuss. We put it in here because we feel like it's necessary, like the pay to play. So we want to keep it.
And currently, how does summer school work? I'm only asking because I don't know. Like, it's
Right.
at the high schools, is it?
So it varies every single year based on our facilities. So like last year, we were getting a new roof and some paving done at Queen Anne's County High School. We usually typically have it there, but we had to move it to the middle school. So it really depends on what buildings are available that aren't having major work done to them.
And people, like, they all go to
But
one building?
But I
or-
think in general, to answer your question too, it's not just about where it's at. It's focused on the high schools and the credit recovery to keep students on track to graduate. So there's not necessarily a middle school program or an elementary school program for the general population, unless a few years ago we had GEARS funding and they did summer enrichment camps. So that was all grant funded. That has since expired, so we won't be having that this summer. There's no options for that. So this summer school program that's on the budget summary is the high school credit recovery. There is also Title I summer school, potentially extended school year for special ed, and migrant program, which is all grant funded. But yeah, the 36,000, I believe, that we have on that is for the high school recovery. And frankly, we have excellent graduation rates ranked, almost top in the state. To me, that directly correlates. You pull that funding away, that graduation rate.
So how many did we have participate in credit recovery last year?
I believe it was about 100 per school, roughly 200 students.
Yeah, it was like 180 something.
Recovering more than just 200 credits.
Yes,
It's all-
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very impactful to the overall success of students to get back on track.
Right.
Something we discussed, Mr. Pender, this past Monday was the transportation costs for the needs of students that have to go to various schools across the bridge. And we talked a little bit about other counties out here kind of helping with that, but I noticed that we are Queen Anne's County, the closest to the bridge and closest over there. And I don't know if the rest of the board knows this, that's an exorbitant cost on our transportation, because we got 1 or 2 students with 24, or what, about 12 or 14 buses, you said? They go across the bridge.
No. We have about 5 or 6 buses to go across the bridge every day. We have about 24 altogether.
Okay, so we have 5 or 6, I thought you said 10 or 12 or 14, I'm sorry.
Right.
There's buses that go across every day, drop off students, and then they sit there, and then they bring them back, which I get it, we have to do that. Have we gone with the rest of the Eastern Shore and tried to take this, this isn't gonna affect us right now in our budget, but this is future, taking this to the state and either looking at building one of these schools here on the Eastern Shore, or basically be saying, WTF, we need more funding because we're driving an hour, and you got Somerset County, you got these other counties that are driving over to Anne Arundel County and stuff with these students. There has to be a better way. It just seems archaic on what we're doing, and I feel like we should be able to come together as an Eastern Shore. Have we looked at the possibilities doing that? Because if that happens in a few years, that can substantially affect our budget. I'm saying it's not going to be now, but if we could look into doing something to get that ball rolling, everybody knows it, but what's being done about it?
Yeah, so we're
Is
doing
that-
a lot about it. Actually,
Okay.
we have, through ESMEC, we have hired a full-time person who is the director, who's working directly with MSDE and Kennedy Kruger to bring a site here to the Eastern Shore. They've looked at several different areas, one of them being Chesapeake College, but another one, I don't call it off of my head, actually. But they're looking at different sites to be able to bring a program here. Now, we're focusing on our elementary students first, because that's where our biggest need is right now and our hardest to place students right now. So all of ESMEC, though, has come together and have already had multiple meetings with Kennedy Kruger and MSDE's special education, as well as the state superintendent, to move forward with creating a school here on the shore.
What kind of forward pressure can the rest of folks start doing? Because this is something that a lot of people aren't seeing. I feel like this could directly impact a lot of people that don't know what's going on. I feel like we should be able to, as a board, link up with other boards, as well as, I see what you're doing, but putting that forward pressure on, because that's a substantial part of our budget, huge. And that can change aspects in the future of positions, layoffs, programs.
Sure,
Like I said, I know that's not right now,
I guess as the
but we should be
board,
forward thinking at the same time.
I mean, I guess the board could do like a position type of letter of information or something and send it to the Dr. Wright and to Kennedy Kruger that says we wholly support the move to create a school on the shore that meets the needs of ASMEC students in the area of special education. I don't know what other, I don't know what other pressure per se that you could put on. I think that they're well aware of the need, and
Okay.
I think that our director, who is Kelly Griffith, Dr. Griffith, a former superintendent of Talbot County, has been boots on the floor to
Perfect.
just to really organize the meetings and keep it going and keep that pressure going. But I mean, that's the only thing I think. Certainly as a board, you could reach out to other board presidents and say, hey, would you like to do a joint letter, maybe from all of ESMEC, and have every board president's signature on that says, hey, we support this, how can we help to make this happen and push it forward? I'm happy to help facilitate that.
Are they looking,
Yeah.
sorry, are they looking for one facility? Because I know that now we go to more than one because
Yeah.
based on the need of the student.
Yeah, right now I think that's a starting point, just because, it is a big endeavor, and I think once they can get one established, then I think maybe they can mirror that out in maybe other areas,
So we're
even
still
on the shore.
So we're still talking about quite a bit of time, because even if they've identified a school, it doesn't address all the needs of all the students that we send out.
Yeah, that's very true, but it certainly it's going to help. It's going
I
to
get
help a
it.
lot.
I
Yeah,
get
it's
it.
definitely going to help. But you're right, no, we have students who have various needs. Certainly, that's not going to assist one of our students who either goes to the School of the Deaf or School of the Blind. Like that, those students have those particular Maryland programs that we're not going to be able to duplicate here.
And
But
we
as it
still have to
relates
send them over.
Right, but as it relates to some of the behavioral type of programs that our students do go to over the bridge, this would help to eliminate those students traveling to those areas. But, so you're right, there's absolutely different disabilities, and we won't be able to meet them all in one building.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So my question is, and there probably is not going to be an answer, but if we were to get everything and we're whole, it still won't solve future issues unless, from what I'm understanding, unless the state gives us more money, we're just going to be in this position every single year.
Not necessarily, because once we conclude our contract, then we would go back to the table. And so you wouldn't necessarily see this huge amount here of basically $4 million. I mean, you're going to see something, right? Because you're going to be in negotiations, but who knows what that number would be. It's been inflated because we had to meet that $60,000. So we had to do 18% over 3 years. That's pretty high rate of raise for our staff. They typically don't see that every year. So I would estimate that those two line items would significantly be reduced after they have received 18% over 3 years.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, it does.
yeah. So that would be one big thing. And really, honestly, hopefully, when we look at some of our, eventually with our healthcare costs, utilization of Marathon as it continues to go up will continue to help us utilize a fixed rate for our employees as it relates to services that they are getting. And so, so that over time, we'll see that. Plus, over time, the contract says any new employees that come in, they're paying a different insurance.
The new hires don't get the same.
It's a little different, right? A new hire, if I'm an individual and I'm a new hire, I have to pay a percentage towards my premium, where people who are kind of grandfathered in completely don't pay anything. And we do absolutely have a Cadillac model of insurance that is crippling our district. It's absolutely.
And that is what was the.
Negotiated prior to, years ago, negotiated. That's all negotiated, and that was probably, Michael, I don't know, 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago.
And it's continually
Right.
added back
So-
into their contract.
So I think
Added on to.
I think the people at the table at the time felt like it was a good give, and as we give and take in negotiations, but they didn't understand the compounding factor of that give over a long period of time. And so now we've subsequently seen that compounding factor. It's grown exponentially, and that's what's really hurting us. So our insurance rates, in this particular budget here, you'll see that the insurance piece of things and the overall salary enhancements and fixed costs associated with them is the majority of this increase.
That can be renegotiated in their next contract, correct?
That can be renegotiated in the next contract.
So just because it was given to them 10 years ago, like if we agree upon it and there's negotiation, like that's not a guarantee. It doesn't have to
No,
stay
not
forever.
not what they pay. That would only be for new employees. Those grandfathered in would stay.
Not necessarily, and
Because it's
only I
under the
say that
contract.
because negotiations are open at that time. So if during negotiations, the union said that, yes, we'll concede and everybody's going to start paying. I mean, that's part of negotiations. Now,
I was just
likely
throwing
never
out
going to
there, it can
happen
happen.
because
Yeah,
once
it
you
would
get
be.
something in the
Yeah.
contract, it's very difficult to reverse it and
I
get it
thought
out.
they
But it
kept
is,
that.
it is,
Okay.
right now, that's how it is, Stan. That's how the language is. That's what we negotiated, that right now, everybody else is grandfathered in. Any new employees go with this model. But that's not to say that they couldn't be at a table and change that. So at any time, that can change, but it has to be negotiated. And that's really the difference between the county and us, that our employees we have all of these contracted, employee units, and they don't. So they can change insurance percentages without having to go through negotiations. And that's why it's more challenging for us to change that than it is for the county to change that.
I see we go through MABE's insurance.
Yes.
Is that a significant discount that we go through them?
Yes, because we're in a consortium. And so if we were self-insured, I don't even know what the cost would be. I would be scared to even estimate.
There's 13 counties in that consortium, if I remember from
I was going to say, I thought
the
it was
last
more.
MABE.
I think it's just 2 that are not.
Yeah, I think it's
That's right,
more.
it is.
Yeah, Montgomery
Yeah,
County is one of them.
And then Baltimore
big
And
enough.
Baltimore
City, I think.
City, yeah,
Baltimore
Baltimore
City.
City. Yeah,
So
it gives us the buying power.
22 out
Yeah.
of 24.
And for that matter, so does ESMIC Trust and Energy. Having having that group gives us the ability to do better things with our negotiations. The costs are still going up. So all of those energy costs, everything are constantly exponentially growing, as we all know. We see it in our own budgets, right? So we know inflation's out there, and when you put it on over $100 million budget, you see that exponentially, impact it greater than you would at your own pocket.
So speaking of budgets and everything, didn't we, it was kind of said that we could use some software for the accounting department, correct? Like, is that anywhere in here? Should we think about adding that? If we are going to manage this much money, do you think it would be good? I know we don't have any extra money, but
Excuse me, I have not put that in there yet just because I haven't been able to reach out and get any sort of demo or cost on what that is so far. I could estimate and probably, I would, don't hold me to this because I would have to check, but it seems like it would probably be somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000, a half of that recurring. About half of that would be the initial setup of the program. It just would be a rough guess, just based on different demos I've seen of things.
Yeah, and I think having our 2 new people come in to finance will be certainly their charge to do that, to investigate and look at the different platforms, see what the cost is going to be, and bring that to us to see how we can fund that. But I completely agree. We know it's an area that we need to go for, and we're absolutely going to do that. It's just going to take us a little time.
But if you want me to put that in there, just let me know and I can put that in there and it'll just change. Like I added the superintendent search line.
what do you all think? Anybody?
So I was going to say, next week, we have one more budget meeting
Okay.
that's on the calendar for next week. And I believe that's the one we're supposed to vote on the budget?
No,
Okay,
it's capital.
good, because there's still some open items that we need to make sure we have information on.
I would appreciate the board giving me some direction. We will be meeting with the commissioners. We only meet 2 at a time, so we're not breaking any Open Meeting Act rules, but we meet with them to just share where we are, so they're not like blindsided by something. So we can just share with them, this is kind of the thoughts of the board, this is kind of the direction they're moving in, this is kind of what we're thinking that we may do, and I'd appreciate it, knowing kind of what direction as it relates to what we've presented to you tonight, of talking to the commissioners next Tuesday, to share kind of what direction. It won't be official, it would just be like what direction we're moving in.
I'm
for
looking at the
asking.
veteran members.
No, you
Yeah,
guys, me and Shannon said we're good for asking. It's up, whatever you guys decide, we're as a
Asking for,
group.
for what?
The full amount, all of
Okay,
it.
yes, I agree. It can't hurt, and the community knows
Right.
what's happened in the schools and the impact it's had, losing money, so.
And then I guess hope for the best, prepare, what, are we gonna start?
For the best, prepare for the worst?
Yeah, start,
Yes.
if we don't get that, then.
We have
we're
already
gonna-
started that.
Okay.
Absolutely already started that, looking at what positions do we actually freeze this year, which ones absolutely have to come back, or if it was frozen this year, is there a way that we can eliminate that position? We've already started there. We've already started looking, as I said, at who's retiring, which ones do we have to replace, which ones can we eliminate? So we definitely have already started, and we'll continue. That'll be ongoing. We'll continue to revisit that every week as we go through this process.
Do you have any thoughts, Mr. Dryer?
When was the last time there was a surplus going into a budget year? Just like, is there,
Before the end of the COVID cliff.
Yeah, so just like.
I
guess
about 2 years ago.
Yeah, like 2 years ago. Like last year.
but like what before COVID? Like what was it like before COVID, before there was kind of that variability of the funding? Was it always kind of?
I don't know that I can answer that. I have to go back and research that.
I can
'cause wasn't
remember,
here.
and there wasn't, I don't remember there being
We've never.
big budget problems before COVID.
Yeah, I mean, we've always had a little bit of money. Well, Sid.
Case in point.
Sid has, we've always had a little bit of money left over, right? Where you've been able to do just a little bit of things prior to
Yes.
COVID, and then
Right.
now we've got not. Yeah,
'Cause
last year was the year that broke us.
I was gonna say, case in point, my kid started 5th grade. That's when we issued a 1-for-1 on electronic equipment for every student, except for elementary. So middle and high all got brand-new laptops when she started 5th grade. So we've had money, a little left over every year. Of course, now we bought them without a backup plan.
Don't even get it.
Don't get me started on the no updating the Wi-Fi, no service agreements. We just bought a whole lot of laptops and got them.
Oh,
And then they went to school and they turned them on and the whole school shut down. Because it couldn't handle 500 new freaking laptops. And they had to do rolling log-ons.
But we're good now.
But we're good.
We're good now.
And we got people that can service them.
We do. We have an excellent team.
I have a question, if I'm allowed to ask, please. So we had our start here on the active employee list from Dr. Noel and his team. And then I added the summary chart breaking down by school and position classification. If that isn't if that's not helpful to the board, if it's not enough, if we could get guidance on what we can do to help that.
I think that might be a conversation for closed session.
Just in the display,
I get it.
and that's fine.
All of the additional stuff behind it will have to go and close because it will
Well,
apply to people.
it would be great if the board could take some time to look at this and send either Carrie questions or Dr. Kibler questions or myself, somebody so that we can be prepared to give you information. As I said, I know I hear a lot of angst about central office, and we're happy to identify who is actually serving schools full-time, who's serving this building full-time, so that you can have a better idea of, what that looks like, if that makes sense.
Perfect.
I mean, it would help, it would probably give us more information on exactly what you said, the roles and responsibilities.
The roles and responsibilities, yeah.
For, I wouldn't just say we know what a principal is in there, but some of the other positions that aren't.
Yeah, like a behavioral specialist. or
Correct,
like what
roles,
is
responsibilities.
responsible, yeah.
Or say, for instance, we know she wears 77 hats, being,
She does,
inflate.
actually.
But like roles and responsibilities of each secretary that's in, because when you think of 10 secretaries, the public, that sounds like a lot. It really does. But do they really know how many offices are within central office? Do they really know what their roles and responsibilities? So from 1,000-foot level, it seems like a lot. You're like, why do you need 10 secretaries? So I think to ease people's knowledge or their understanding of what are their roles and who are they serving, what are they doing, because then that can help. Because to me, there's so many different levels to this that folks don't really know. So if we're trying to be transparent and we're trying to talk about the budget, that's the first thing people are going to want to dive into is, do we need that many secretaries and why is there that many? Or I'm not just throwing that one out there because that's what we talked about, but there's other positions. So if we had a better idea of the roles, responsibilities, where they're working for the most part, just exactly what you said,
well-
And also if they're doing more than one job. like if some certain jobs were eliminated and someone kind of took over, and even though they still have that title, if they've absorbed some of the responsibilities of a previous job that was eliminated, now they're, does that make sense? Like it's almost like they have more value because they have
Right, and that's
done it. And it is, I don't know, I find that would be helpful.
correct.
I mean, there's also, you can, not that we have money to spend, but you can spend a little bit of money and have somebody come in and do like an HR audit, you know, there's like such a thing, and they could identify if something could be combined, and, you know, that might be a better choice, is not us looking at it and having somebody else work.
Well, and in all fairness, I feel like our team does do that every
Okay.
year. I really do. And, you know, Dr. Kibler shared, each department basically has one. So the department has one, Jolene wears probably 5 different hats, from, you know, helping in the mail area because we eliminated distributive services to buses to, I mean, like
Usage.
building usage. I mean, I could go on and on. Dr. Knoll has one person that does all the intakes, all of the fingerprinting, all of, you know, that kind of thing. Finance has one. Dr. Kibler has a bigger team. He's got, you know, 11 supervisors, and each one of those who have their own
Share.
budget. Yep, they share 2 secretaries with all of those. That includes all of your Title I grants. It includes all of your Title II grants, all of your Title IV grants. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes with that. So those 2 secretaries serve 11 people in a series of grants.
All the supervisors have multiple contents that they're responsible
Responsible
for,
for,
where
yeah.
you'll see in some districts, I get to be grade 6 to 12 math. You know, our supervisors are doing more than just
Yeah,
one
social
subject.
studies, world languages, student service learning, you know, I could go on just for one person.
And that's when I talked about the bubble org chart. That kind of explains it, because when you say, hey, my staff just has 2 secretaries, cool, but when you look at it from the bubble org chart, now you see that there's 11 people, everything else that goes with it.
So I think that
So you
could,
can kind of visually see and understand. Here, you don't grasp that. You don't see that, if that makes sense.
so we can do that. I think it would make sense for the central office. I don't
Right.
necessarily think it would make sense for a school because it won't fork. You'll have principal, and then you'll have, if you're at Queen Anne's County High School, you have 120 people.
Most of it's the same thing.
It all
Yeah,
goes one
yeah,
row.
right.
But we could do a department in this building, if that's sufficient.
That'd be a great start. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have any.
Mr. Dreyer?
Not at this moment.
Executive team?
That's my question.
All right, well, the next item on the list is future meetings. Our next meeting is February the 26th, 2025 at 4:30. It is a budget work session.
I lied.
Oh,
This is a
dude.
quick one. Are all of the contracts annual, or are they like 3, 4, 5-year contract for executive teams?
For executive team members, they
Yes.
range from 1 to 3.
1 to 3? Do we have any coming up this year that we need to plan for?
I'd have to go back and look at them. I can get that information to you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna start again.
Sorry.
Next meeting, February 26th, 2025. It's a budget work session, starts at 4:30. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn the February 19th, 2025 budget work session at 6:03 PM.
I second that.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.